Hello and welcome to the News at 7, where we get to the heart of the day's stories and communities across Scotland. Tonight, the legal ruling which could have huge implications for land ownership in Scotland. In what will be the first case of its kind, a landowner loses an appeal against a Scottish Government decision forcing it to sell a plot in St Andrews to a community group. Scots are among the huge numbers travelling to Rome for the Pope's funeral tomorrow. We speak to one of our leading bishops who's there. We'll also hear from the sports historian who says he's found evidence of the world's oldest football pitch in Dumfries and Galloway, which he says strengthens our claim to be the inventors of the game. Also tonight.
Singing songs, thinking this is a life, and you wake up in the morning and you have much fantasize where you're gonna go, where you're gonna go, where you're gonna sleep tonight.
We catch up with Amy McDonald at a pop-up gig in her hometown about her new album and tour. We'll also have all the sport with Lewis. And what have you got for us tonight?
Well, Louise, we'll hear from Hibernian head coach David Gray, who's been given a new contract after keeping the Easter Road club unbeaten in the league since December.
Hello, I'm Louise Cowie. Welcome to the News at 7. It could be the first time that privately owned land is forcibly sold to a community group in Scotland. A landowner has lost an appeal against a Scottish Government decision which forces it to sell a patch of overgrown land in Fife to the local group. Members want to develop what they describe as an eyesore in St Andrews into a public garden. Ellen Beaton reports.
There are big plans for this small patch of land.
I would love to see this with a seating area, nicely landscaped, and the whole community of St Andrews could come and enjoy it. And to one side would be the statue of Mary Queen of Scots. As everyone knows, she gave the land to the town for us all to enjoy.
Alison Wind is a member of community group Poets Nuke, which hopes to transform this overgrown plot into a public garden dedicated to Mary Queen of Scots. The only problem is they don't actually own the land. But that could change after a legal ruling has backed the community's compulsory purchase bid.
We can scarcely believe after all these years that this has actually happened. We certainly didn't expect it to be so long, nor that it should finish up in a legal process. But once we have acquired the garden, then the first step is really to do a clear up. After all, you just take a look at it, and that's the most obvious first step, really.
Today, a Dundee sheriff backed the Scottish Government's decision to force the land to be sold to the group. Lawyers acting for the landowner did not comment on this judgment, but MML law previously said that property owners across Scotland should be concerned by the move. Rural Landowners Association, Scottish Land and Estates declined to comment as they consider the judgment in full. Land reform campaigners, though, see it as progress.
Landowners who are owning land in the public interest, they're managing it for the benefit of the environment, for the benefit of local communities, for the benefit of local economic development, they have nothing to worry about. There's no chance that these rights could be used against them. But for landowners who are absentee, who are not engaging with communities, who are sitting on vacant and derelict sites, this is a warning essentially that you need to bring that land into productive use, or you need to sell it to someone who is going to put it into productive use.
The Scottish Government has welcomed the sheriff's decision, and ministers have already said that they hope what happens with this plot of land acts as an example that other communities across Scotland can follow. The landlord now has until the 13th of May to decide whether they'll challenge this ruling. Ellen Beaton, reporting Scotland, St Andrews.
Police have arrested and charged 8 more people aged 16 to 38 in an investigation into an ongoing gangland feud. Since March, there have been a series of assaults, shootings and firebombing incidents in Glasgow and Edinburgh. A total of 20 people have now been arrested and face charges including attempted murder, fire-raising, firearms offences and road traffic offences.
There have been a number of arrests, particularly in the last few days, for some quite horrendous offences. In terms of how long this is going to go on, I'm not going to speculate on that. What I would like to say and reassure the public is that Police Scotland are absolutely committed to putting an end to this, and I think our activities over the last few days highlight our commitment to that.
People from all across Scotland are travelling to Rome along with world leaders and royals ahead of tomorrow's funeral of Pope Francis, who died on Monday at the age of 88. The First Minister will be there, as will Bishop John Keenan from the Paisley Diocese. He'll be representing the Bishops' Conference of Scotland at the funeral. I caught up with him earlier and asked what the atmosphere was like in Rome.
Well, I've come down to St Peter's Square and the crowds are building and building and building. You can probably see round about me that a lot of the barriers have been put up, the TV screens have been put up and things like that, but all around this, the crowds building and building and building. I am used to Rome. I've never seen really crowds like this in any other day of people coming around, of pilgrims being here. The atmosphere, sombre. I think there's a sense that that in the church that we've lost a pope, we've lost a father of the universal family. I think there's also a sense across the world that the world has lost a fairly unique leader. So it's sombre, but it's positive as well. There's an atmosphere of gratefulness, a sort of a hopeful atmosphere as well. Pope Francis gave us lots of values that I think have chimed with people. And there's a hope that those values will live on and spread across the world.
How does it feel to be part of what is such an historic event?
Yeah, it's quite a thing. I do feel the sort of the momentousness of the moment. It's an honour to be here, isn't it? I'm here representing the Catholics of Scotland and in some sense the people of Scotland too. But I'm also aware of the sort of a sort of responsibility to bring with me the good wishes, the gratitude, the respect of the people of Scotland.
And you were lucky enough to have met the Pope.
Yeah, on a number of occasions I met the Pope, and he was always, he was always kind, always friendly, very informal. One time when all of the Scottish bishops met him, when we came into his room, he organised the chairs so they were around in a circle, and the 8 of us and him just spent the whole morning together. The first thing he said was, look, you can say anything you like in here. You can even criticise me. And then he laughed and said, if you criticise me in my office, it's not a sin. Outside the world, I'm not so sure. And that put us all at ease. And then he listened to us. He was more interested in listening to what we had to say than to say anything himself.
And will thoughts now be turning towards a potential successor?
Well, that already is sort of happening on the moment of the Pope's death, the day of the Pope's death. The cardinals began to meet every day, and they will meet every day until the conclave. That would be the Roman cardinals at the beginning, but as more cardinals arrive from across the world. First of all, they're looking at the arrangements for the Pope's funeral. They're looking at the 9 days of mourning, but within that, they'll still meet every day. And eventually, towards the end of those 9 days, they're beginning to think, what does the church need now? What has Francis left us? And what does the church need going forward under his steam?
Let's get a roundup of the stories making the BBC News app in Scotland now. Members of the Unite Union at Dundee University have backed strike action. The university faces financial difficulties with a £35 million deficit and up to 700 jobs at risk. The former Hunterston B power station in North Ayrshire has been declared nuclear-free after 3 years of defuelling. All spent fuel has been sent to Sellafield in Cumbria. Scotland's school exam season is underway with more than 132,000 candidates involved over the next month. There have been concerns in recent years about falling standards and a failure to tackle the attainment gap. For more on all of these stories, you can scan the QR code or we'll take you to the BBC Scotland News app where there's more news for you, including how a convicted murderer on the run from prison is back behind bars after being spotted on a bus in Edinburgh. Councillors in Edinburgh have approved emergency measures aimed at tackling the city's worsening homeless crisis by suspending new council lets in all but a few exceptions. The council says it needed to take action to fulfil its legal obligations, but people who've spent years on the housing waiting list say they're worried the new plan will reduce their chances of getting a suitable home.
I've looked at like a few 3-bedrooms. I've even opted to go for 2 bedrooms and have 2 kids sharing, and then I'll sleep in the living room because it's the only options that I have, because I can't afford very many of the rent. So if there's no council properties for a decent like rent that I can afford, then we'll be stuck in a place that I feel is unsafe.
But the housing charity shelters say the amount of homeless people needing support in the city means these emergency measures are the right move. Earlier I spoke to their director, Alison Watson.
I think it's an emergency measure that recognises that the council has been failing to protect thousands of homeless people. There are now more homeless people in temporary accommodation in Edinburgh than there are in the whole of Wales. And in March this year, 3 out of 5 households who approached the council looking for accommodation were turned away because there simply wasn't enough accommodation to offer them that. I think there's an urgent need to protect the 3,155 kids who are stuck in temporary accommodation in Edinburgh. And there's also an urgent need to tackle the fact that we've got increasing numbers of people who are being forced to sleep on the streets in the capital.
Are there any risks associated with this? For example, people who have been waiting a long time to get housing that may not get it now?
People on waiting lists for social housing will still be able to access social housing from housing associations. But I think what this situation reveals is that demand for affordable housing in Edinburgh far outstrips supply. This is an important emergency measure, but it needs to go hand in hand with action to tackle the root causes of Edinburgh's housing emergency. The council recognised that back in November 2023 when they declared a housing emergency. And just after that, Scotland's housing regulator assessed Edinburgh as not having the capacity and resources to meet its statutory obligations. So we've known for some time that there's a serious and escalating situation in the capital. This is the right emergency measure to take in the context of that emerging crisis. But at the same time, we do need to see the Scottish Government step in and offer more support to Edinburgh so that they can fulfil all their legal duties and protect homeless people from sleeping rough.
So what could the Scottish Government do, in your opinion?
I think the Scottish Government could offer more multi-year funding for social housing. We were delighted that the Scottish Government reversed last year's cut to the housing budget, but they need to go further than that. They need to give local authorities confidence that that money will recur year after year and they can build with that. I think Edinburgh is also beginning to do more of buying homes from the open market and converting them to social housing. And we would like to see Scottish Government continue to support local authorities to do that. There is also a need for Scottish Government to provide more support for local authority homelessness services, because we now have a situation in Scotland where almost half of the population lives in an area where their local authority can't cope with demand. So this is an important emergency measure that Edinburgh is taking, but Scottish Government needs to step up and do more as well.
Alison Watson from Shelter Scotland there. Well, we asked the Scottish Government for a response. In a statement, the Housing Minister, Paul McLennan, told us that increasing housing supply is key to reducing pressures, and the Government is investing £768 million in affordable housing this year, with £40 million for local authorities with sustained temporary accommodation pressures. Thank you for joining us on tonight's News at 7. We have more in the programme, including... We hear from Amy McDonald, who surprised shoppers with a special gig in Glasgow ahead of a new album launch.
It's looking a bit mixed weather-wise over the weekend, but into next week, looks like we could have the warmest spell of the year so far. I'll have a full forecast later in the programme.
And could Scotland be home to the world's oldest football pitch? But first, it's Sport with Lewis.
And I don't have the answer to that though, Louise. I've got other stuff for you. Yes, good evening. Hard work and sticking together. That's what Hibernian head coach David Gray attributes his side's turnaround this season, something that's resulted in him being rewarded with a new 3-year contract. Well, 5 months ago, Hibs were bottom of the table, but now it's third position they occupy after going 17 league matches without defeat. Assistant coaches Liam Craig, Eddie May and Craig Sampson have also agreed extended stays at Easter Road, and Gray's delighted with the new deal.
That's obviously brilliant to get that recognition, and I think, as I've already said, it doesn't happen by accident. It comes from sticking to your beliefs and being true to yourself and sticking together during that difficult time. And I think as a group of players, a staff, myself, especially myself, I learnt a lot about myself earlier in the season this year. First year in management, everything that comes with it, and the challenges that come with that, and there's still loads to improvement and learning to be done from my point of view, of course, learning all the time, trying to improve all the time, and delighted with where we are at this moment in time. And when the club come forward and look to try and think about the future, it's always nice to get that. But as I say, I'm very grateful and respectful to all the hard work from every single person in this building that's managed to move the club forward, and that's the most important thing, that we deliver on the pitch. And if we can all deliver on the pitch, then the club can move forward, and that's our job.
And this is how the top half of the Premiership table looks. And tomorrow, David Gray takes his Hibs side north to face Aberdeen there in 5th. And that could be costly defeat for Aberdeen in terms of their hopes for 3rd place. We'll see how that one pans out. The Dons have only lost one of their last 11 games in all competitions and were boosted by reaching the Scottish Cup final last weekend. Slovenian striker Ester Sokler will miss the rest of the season with a leg injury, but manager Jimmy Tillin is confident they can produce another good result at Pittodrie.
The last part of the season we have been quite good and performance are more stable again. So that's why we put us in that position that we are still there and can compete for it. Of course, tomorrow all the games are left are really important for us. But of course, tomorrow we play against Hibernia and we're 3 points ahead, and we play at home and we will try to win this game. But even if you win, you have some more games to play. But tomorrow is really important to win.
Rangers interim boss Barry Ferguson admits it will pain him to watch Celtic win the title and hopes it will fire the players on for next season. The champions are on the cusp of a 4th consecutive title and a 13th in 14 years, and they'll clinch it if they draw against Dundee United at Tannadice tomorrow.
It'll be painful for me. It'll be painful for my staff. It'll be painful for the supporters, and I want it to be painful for my players. Because you're at Rangers and we need to start properly challenging for trophies. It's sore when you see your fiercest rivals win trophies. You don't like to see that. It should make you even more determined, and hopefully that's going to be the case next season.
Okay, to snooker now, and John Higgins' 2nd round match at the World Championship against China's Zhao Guodong couldn't be any closer, with the pair on 8 frames all. The Wizard of Wishaw, who's a 4-time world champion at the Crucible in Sheffield, finished this afternoon's session in convincing style, racking up a break of 129. The match concludes tomorrow morning, and whoever's first to 13 frames seals a spot in the quarter-finals. 49-year-old Higgins last won the title there in 2011. And you can follow that match tomorrow morning on the BBC Sport website. You can watch the coverage there and follow live text updates as well. There's also plenty more reading for you ahead of a big weekend of football too, so head to the website for all of that. But of course, Louise, the football starts tonight with Partick v Falkirk in the Championship right here in about 10 minutes.
Of course it does, but my sporting highlight this weekend is going to be the London Marathon. Will you be tuning in?
Of course. Oh yeah, got to see how Eilish gets on.
Absolutely, and then you feel guilty that you can't run more than 5k.
Oh, thanks for putting that in my head, Louise. Yeah, thank you. That'll be my weekend.
Thank you, Liz.
Cheers.
Sticking with sport, and football is coming home is a favourite chant among supporters of our neighbours to the south. But one historian says home might be a lot further north than they think. The world's oldest football pitch was played on 400 years ago, right here in Scotland. Dumfries and Galloway, to be precise. Well, so says historian Jed O'Brien, who founded the Scottish Football Museum. He came in earlier to explain more.
Well, thanks to the Presbyterian Kirk from the 1560s onwards, who kept finding people who were still playing football, we have plenty of documentary evidence that people were playing football. And beautifully, we have one of the most famous Presbyterian divines, Samuel Rutherford, who at Anworth Churchyard in 1627 was so raging that his parishioners were walking past to play football on their football pitch that he went out to them to basically curse them and by implication suggest they were all going to hell. Because if you're not going to church, you're going towards Satan. And because he's famous, his comments have stayed with us. So we were able to go out to Anwath and retrace his steps, and Archaeology Scotland proved what I had said, and we found exactly the pitch hidden in almost a natural bowl, where if you didn't know where it was, you would have walked past it, and it's still there exactly as it was 400 years ago.
And this is going to ruffle a few feathers, potentially a controversial claim, because other countries, as we know, have laid claim to being the home of football.
Well, what I specifically always say is Scotland invented modern world football because the Chinese were playing, kicking a ball up and down 2,500 years ago, and that's fine. But what you have here is a pitch where people, men and women, played regular football. So you can draw a direct line from Anwath, which is still with us, to the first Hampden and the West of Scotland Cricket Ground in Partick, 1872, and the start of modern world football.
Do you think some people out there may challenge this idea?
I would welcome them to challenge, because everyone's entitled to oppose what I've said, but then they have to bring their own facts. And 1627 isn't the start, because Anwath Old Church has been around since 1200. So where people met in Scotland, they will have played football. So if you can find me somewhere where they played football, they passed and they ran, then great, bring it to me and we'll have a discussion.
Football historian Jed O'Brien there, and you can hear more on that story on A View from the Terrace, which is on this channel tonight at 10:30 or on the BBC iPlayer. Now, she's one of Scotland's best-known singer-songwriters, charting hit singles and albums for almost 2 decades. And Amy McDonald is back at it with a new single out this week, her 6th studio album out in the summer, and a tour of the UK and Europe thrown in for good measure. That includes a homecoming gig at Glasgow's Hydro in December, but she gave her local fans and some surprise shoppers a hint of what's to come with a pop-up gig in a Glasgow shopping centre earlier. Our reporter Hazel Martin was there.
Yeah, I released my new single, a track called Is This What You've Been Waiting For, on Wednesday. The last time I released a single was back in like 2021, so it's been quite a while, but I've had such a great response so far. People seem to be loving it. I'm really excited. I've got all these gigs coming up and everything, so I'm just happy to be back doing my thing again.
Tell me kind of about your inspiration behind writing it.
So it was basically just a song that started off about my passion for performing and seeing live music and being in a crowd and just being part of that.
I need to feel the light and sound that's all around. I feel the noise beneath the ground. Oh, is this what you've been waiting for?
I just kind of try and write songs that mean something to me, and I feel like if they mean something to me, then they'll mean something to others.
Dancing like there's no one there before she ever seemed to care. Now she won't there. It's so rock and roll to be alone.
And you're going on a huge tour as well this year and next year, which is really exciting. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, it's been a while since I've been on a proper tour. With my last album, it was interrupted by all the cancellations and the constant rule changes with everything that was happening. So we kind of missed out on that the last time, so it feels like it's been a long time coming.
And you are in Glasgow, you're going to be playing the Hydro. How excited are you about that on home soil?
We done it the last time and I had to be pushed into it because I thought I'm never going to be able to sell all them tickets, and I was completely blown away when we sold it out. So being able to do that again is really special, but I'm still nervous about ticket sales. I'll never relax about anything like that.
Seeing the girls in the high heel shoes, looking for love, they got nothing to lose. Seeing your face under disco lights, the road is spinning by, I feel alright.
You posted on Instagram recently about hearing your music on the radio and what it meant to you, which I felt so touched by.
Oh.
Tell me about that.
Do you know, that was just totally off the cuff. Like, I knew that the song was getting played on Radio 2 that morning, so I'm always going to listen, and that was the first play. And I put it on, and just as soon as it started, I was like, gosh, I'm getting so overwhelmed. And it's really strange to me because I've been doing this now for 18 years. I've heard my song on the radio all over the world for all that time, and it still never feels normal. And I think that I'm glad that it doesn't feel normal, and I think the moment that it feels normal is when you probably would need to stop. But for me, it's just still incredibly exciting, and I still get such a buzz from hearing my songs on the radio. It's just such an amazing part of what I do.
Do you look at other artists and who's coming out and how the industry's changing?
I'm always looking at new artists coming through. I always like having young artists supporting me because I relied on that when I was coming up. I love doing support gigs, so I'm always happy to have new artists on before me, and hopefully they then get to the next step in their career.
We all go round again.
Amy McDonald there speaking to our reporter Hazel Martin, and Amy's new album, Is This What You've Been Waiting For, is out in July. OK, it's time for the weather now, and Gillian is here.
Hi Louise. It's looking like it's warming up quite significantly into next week, but the weekend looking a wee bit more mixed. And today we started out with a fair bit of low cloud, a misty sunrise earlier over the borders, but actually eastern Scotland ended up with a decent amount of bright and sunny spells. You can see a lovely picture of Portobello Beach a little bit earlier. Expertly photobombed here by Dougal the dog. And not quite as much sunshine over the sands at Troon, mind you, because we have had more in the way of cloud coming into western parts thanks to a weather front. Still a couple of weather fronts in play over the weekend, but then as we head into next week, it's settling down and it's warming up. Let's take a look at the pressure chart, because you can see over the weekend it is still looking a wee bit unsettled, especially for northwest Scotland. We have a waving weather front making a wee bit of a nuisance of itself, bringing some rain at times. Then into next week, we see that high pressure ridging in from the south. It's settling us down and warm air feeding in off the continent, giving those temperatures a real boost. Tomorrow morning, it's rather a cloudy start to the weekend and a damp one for some, because we still have the remnants of that weather front bringing some showery outbreaks of rain. Wee bit of early brightness for the Western Isles, for the Murray Firth area as well. Temperature-wise, not bad. It won't be a cold night, about 9 or 10 Celsius as we start the day. Quite a noticeable southerly breeze tomorrow, especially for the Isles and the West Coast. But there will be something of an improvement as we head into the afternoon. That rain becoming lighter and patchier. A bit more in the way of sunshine coming through for northwest Scotland, though there will be a scattering of showers, and not bad temperature-wise, about 13 to 16 Celsius for most of us. So we head into the second half of the weekend, and there's that weather front I was talking about, still bringing some outbreaks of rain, particularly to northwest Scotland. So we start with rain in the west, the northwest, some of it extending up into the northeast as well. It nudges northward, so it will be the Western Isles and the Northwest Highlands seeing the most persistent rain on Sunday. Elsewhere, for southern, central, eastern parts, cloud thinning and breaking to allow some bright and sunny spells, lifting temperatures to 18 Celsius in the best of it in the northeast, but again, quite breezy from the south. Now we head into Monday, still with some patchy rain affecting the northwest. Otherwise it's dry, fairly cloudy, but you can see those temperatures starting to inch up. It will be a breezy day on Monday. And as we head into Tuesday and Wednesday, we see things really warming up as high pressure builds in. The peak of the temperatures will be on Wednesday, and then for Thursday we introduce something a wee bit cooler from the northwest. But for Tuesday, we're set fair, high pressure in charge, lots of sunshine, and temperatures up to 21 Celsius. Louise.
21, you're spoiling us, Julie.
Not bad.
Thanks so much. And that's all we have time for. From everyone here, do enjoy the rest of your Friday evening. Bye for now.